A Wanderer in Paris. Based on the 1909 writings of E.V. Lucas. A slow journey through the streets, gardens, and shadows of Paris. Episode 1, Along the Seine at Dusk. Let the streets grow quiet. Let the day sink gently into lighted windows and pale reflections. And let us walk slowly, step by step, into the heart of old Paris. Tonight, we begin not with a map, but with a man. His name was Edward Verrall Lucas, born in 1868 in the south of England. A quiet observer by nature, Lucas became one of his era's great literary wanderers, not in the sense of discovering the unknown, but of noticing the familiar more deeply. He wrote of cities not as backdrops, but as companions. He listened to their footsteps. He watched their shadows. And in 1909, he published a small, slow book called A Wanderer in Paris. It is not a guidebook. There are no directions. It is a walk, a long, meditative stroll through quarters and courtyards, over bridges and through time. And it is with this book, in his soft voice, that we walk tonight. We begin with the Seine. The river is low and brown this evening, curling through the middle of the city like a worn ribbon, its edges flecked with late sunlight. Lucas stands on a bridge, the Pont Neuf, perhaps, and watches the light bend across the water. He does not rush. He lingers. Of all Paris, he writes, the Seine is the most Parisian thing. It curves like thought. It reflects everything, and reveals nothing. On one bank, the towers of Notre Dame, quiet now in the falling dusk. On the other, the long, low wall of the Louvre, its windows glowing gold, the lamps beginning to hum in the gathering dark. And between them, the river moves, not fast, but constantly. Lucas describes the bridges not just as structures, but as personalities. He notes the Pont des Arts, delicate and iron-framed, built not to carry carriages, but conversations. The Pont Royal, broad and solemn. And the Pont Alexander III, a bit too proud of its gold. He observes how people cross them. A couple arm in arm. A bookseller wheeling his cart. A soldier smoking slowly, his shadow longer than his stride. These are not characters. They are silhouettes. Lucas never intrudes. He simply lets them pass. The geography here is subtle but constant. To the west lies the Latin Quarter, its alleys cooling in shade. To the east, Ile de la Cite, the island in the river's fork, crowned by the cathedral and surrounded by water like a stone floating on time. From the bridges, he sees the spire of Sainte-Chapelle, the rooftop trees of the Jardin du Luxembourg, and the far-off dome of the Pantheon, now just a pale shape against a sky slowly turning to violet. He makes no list. Only mentions. Like someone pointing with his eyes, not his hands. And still, the Seine flows. It holds reflections, lamps, boats, stone, sky. Lucas watches the flickers. He lets them tell the story. He writes. The river is not simply water. It is memory in motion. It keeps Paris from becoming a museum. It changes without leaving. As he walks, Lucas doesn't describe what he does. He describes what he notices. The way a lamplighter touches the pole with a long hook. The way pigeons shift on the roofline, cooing softly in the warm evening air. The smell of tobacco and bread. the sound of distant wheels on cobblestones. He never raises his voice. He never tells you what to feel. He only walks, and invites you to walk beside him. So tonight, let us walk, too. Not far. Not fast. Just a slow crossing of a Parisian bridge. Let the sky turn to charcoal and the river darken with stars. Let the buildings glow quietly and the city settle into itself. And if you listen closely, you may hear the soft steps of Edward Verrall Lucas. Somewhere just ahead of you. Pausing again at the railing. Watching the water move. Next time, we'll follow him through the gardens of the Palais Royal. Past fountains and worn stones. Into the quiet corners of a city that never shouts. But for now, let your breath slow. Let the river carry your thoughts. And let Paris hold you gently, like light on water. Episode 2, The Gardens of the Palais Royal. The morning arrives quietly in Paris. Not with alarm clocks or traffic, but with light, slanting and soft, filtering through old windows and falling gently across stone. In the courtyards and alleys, the air still smells of night. But in the gardens, the day is already beginning. And that is where we find him. Edward Verrall Lucas, English essayist and walker of cities, is standing beneath the chestnut trees of the Palais Royal. The Palais itself is grand, arcaded, columned, shaped by centuries of nobility and revolution. But Lucas does not write about the architecture. Not really. He writes about what the light touches. It is a place not of silence, but of softness, he says. A garden ringed by arcades, where footsteps seem to echo politely. Where fountains whisper, and pigeons blink in sunlight. Let us place ourselves beside him, in the gravel paths of the inner square. Above us, green canopies of trimmed linden and horse chestnut. Before us, a small stone fountain, half-shaded, half-glinting. Around us, Parisians walking slowly, some alone, some with newspapers folded under their arms, some pushing prams or lost in thought. Lucas notices everything, but comments on little. He does not ask names. He does not interrupt. He simply watches how a man pauses at a bench, turns his face to the sun, and says nothing. And then moves on. The Palais Royal is tucked just north of the Louvre, in the first arrondissement of Paris. Once a royal residence, it is now a place of colonnades and cafes, still elegant, but no longer grand. Lucas admires this, how grandeur can soften into grace. He walks slowly along the arcade, beneath iron lanterns and shop signs gilded in old letters. He passes a bookseller. A shop filled with opera glasses. A tailor with dusty velvet in the window. He writes. It is a street of glances, not purchases. One looks. One imagines. One never hurries. In the center of the garden, children are playing with hoops. Their laughter is high and light, like sparrows. Old men read newspapers. A woman in a dark blue dress adjusts her hat with a pin, slowly, without a mirror. A waiter wipes tables with a practiced gesture, not because they are dirty, but because it is morning, and that is what one does. Lucas finds these rituals reassuring. They belong to the city as much as stone or sky. He pauses at the far end of the garden, near the gate that leads toward Rue de Beaujolais. The trees behind him rustle slightly. The wind carries the smell of warm gravel, ink, and croissants. He is not sentimental, but he is attentive. The gardens do not need to change, he writes. They need only to remain. A place where movement is slow, and time holds its breath. We might think of cities as fast, noisy things. But Lucas teaches us otherwise. In his Paris, there are spaces carved out for stillness. Places where footsteps are soft, and thoughts arrive gently. Where history sits quietly on a bench beside you, saying nothing, but present. So tonight, or this morning, or whenever you need calm, imagine a quiet garden in the center of a great city. Imagine chairs that slide on gravel. Imagine water falling in a fountain that never quite stops. And beside you, a man in a brown coat, with a pen in one pocket and a notebook in the other. He's not speaking, but you're welcome to walk with him. But for now, stay here in the garden. Let the trees hold their shape above you. Let the pigeons settle. And let the day begin, or end, in peace. Episode 3, Among the Booksellers by the Seine. The light this morning is soft and gray, the kind of light that makes stone glow and water darken. Lucas walks slowly along the left bank of the Seine, just beyond the Isle de la Cite, where the river narrows and curves and breathes with age. This is where the books live. Not in libraries, but in boxes. Green wooden boxes, nailed to the parapets of the riverside walls, hinged and handled, and filled with dreams. The bouquinists, booksellers of the Seine, have been part of Paris since the 1600s. They are not merchants so much as guardians. Each stall holds its own private world, old maps, yellowed volumes of poetry, pamphlets no one remembers writing, postcards, engravings, essays, memoirs, novels whose pages are already half-read by time itself. Lucas opens a book and runs a finger down the spine. He doesn't need to buy it. He has already received what he came for. A stall of old books, he writes, is like a cabinet of voices, each one waiting to be heard again. No city understands this like Paris. The wind stirs the corner of a page. A bell rings faintly from across the river. A barge moves under Pont Saint-Michel, its long silhouette brushing water and shadow. Lucas does not describe crowds. Only moments. A man in a cap reading without buying. A girl trailing her fingers along the edge of the stone wall. The click of a box closing. The scent of paper and river air mixed together like memory. We are near Notre Dame now, its towers rising to the east, pale against the morning sky. But Lucas does not turn toward the cathedral. He turns toward the river. He follows the stone embankment, walking slowly, stopping often. Each stall is a new possibility. He finds an old print of Montmartre. A poetry collection from 1842. A bookplate that says simply, Ex Libris Marie D. He smiles. One need not read a book to love it, he notes. It is enough sometimes to know it exists, and that it waited for you. Geographically, we are in the 5th arrondissement, walking westward along Quai de la Tournelle and Quai Voltaire. To the north, across the Seine, the Louvre and its long facade watch in silence. To the south, narrow streets drift away into the Latin Quarter like tributaries of thought. The city breathes in long sentences. But Lucas walks in quiet punctuation. The booksellers are not all friendly. Some nod. Some ignore him entirely. One offers him a book of jokes from 1875 and winks. Lucas declines, politely. Paris is a city where privacy is possible even in public, he writes. One can be among others without being disturbed. And so he continues. At noon, he stops at a bench. The light has turned warmer now. The green boxes shine in places. A child runs past, laughing. A gull lands near the edge of the quay and stares into the water, unimpressed. Lucas takes a small notebook from his pocket. Not to sketch or describe, only to remember. Then he closes it again. So tonight, or today, imagine this. A stone wall beside a wide river. Green boxes filled with forgotten words. And a man walking slowly, with his hands behind his back. Reading titles like prayers. And listening for a story that might never be spoken aloud. You don't need to read them. You don't need to know the names. Only walk. Only pause. And let the city turn its pages beside you. Next time, we'll follow Lucas into the shaded streets of Montmartre. Where artists work in attics, windmills turn slowly in the past. And every step seems to rise slightly above the city below. But for now, let the river rest. Let the books sleep in their boxes. And let your thoughts drift like paper across water. Episode 4, Up the Slopes of Montmartre. The hill waits. Not loudly, Montmartre never does, but with a quiet confidence that you will find your way upward, eventually. This morning, Lucas walks slowly through the lower streets. The ground begins to rise beneath his feet, cobblestones tilted at a gentle angle, as though the city itself is shifting into a more vertical thought. He does not take the funicular. He climbs. Montmartre, once a village outside the city walls, is now part of Paris, but not entirely. It keeps its own rhythm. Its own stubborn stillness. Here, the streets twist. The buildings lean slightly. The air smells faintly of chalk and bread. And from every corner, there is a glimpse of something higher, a rooftop, a bell tower, the pale dome of Sacré-Cœur, still unfinished in Lucas' time, rising like a question against the sky. Lucas begins his walk from Boulevard de Clichy, near the base of the hill. He passes shuttered cafes, painters with rolled-up canvases, children dragging satchels to school. Then he turns onto Rue Lepic. The climb begins slowly. Not steep, but persistent. One step. Then another. Each one pulling him further from the flat, measured geometry of central Paris and into something rougher, more human. He pauses near a windmill, one of the last. There was a time, he writes, when this hill was all wheat and stone and sky. Now it is stories. Montmartre still remembers its past. The Moulin de la Galette, once a working mill, now hosts music and laughter. The Place du Tertre, still quiet in the early day, will soon fill with sketchbooks and easels and faces drawn from memory. Lucas watches a man hang laundry from a second-story window. He hears the clatter of a glass door shutting behind a boulangerie. He smells coffee and paint thinner, faint and mingled in the morning sun. As he ascends, the city drops behind him. Paris stretches out below, pale gray rooftops, clustered chimneys, steeples, and smoke. It is not a city of noise, from up here. It is a city of texture. Lucas does not rush to the top. He turns onto smaller streets, Rue Norvins, Rue de Saules, where vines climb old brick, and cats stretch lazily beneath blue shutters. He passes a small cemetery. A man nods to him. Lucas nods back. There is no need for words. Montmartre, he writes, speaks in silences, the kind that need no translation. Near the summit, he stops beside a low wall. He looks out over the city, the Seine coiling far below, the towers of Notre Dame softened by distance, the iron lattice of the Eiffel Tower barely visible in the haze. The hill is not proud. It does not boast. It simply offers perspective. The dome of Sacré-Cœur rises behind him. Still under construction, it gleams in parts, dusty in others. Lucas does not dwell on the church. He writes only, "It will be finished." Or it won't. The hill does not mind either way. So tonight, or this morning, or whenever your breath begins to slow, imagine a hill above the city. Imagine a walker in a brown coat, hands in his pockets, climbing not to reach the top, but to feel the slope beneath his shoes. Imagine shutters opening, paint drying, and the hush of a street before the cafes fill. You don't need to be anywhere. You only need to rise, gently, into stillness. Next time, we'll follow Lucas through the courtyards of the Louvre, where art waits not to be admired, but to be noticed. Quietly, slowly, in a room filled with afternoon light. But for now, stay on the hill. Let the chimneys breathe below. And let Montmartre hold you for a while longer. Episode 5, Courtyards and Quiet in the Louvre. The museum is not crowded yet. It is early, the kind of early when marble still holds a trace of night's cool, and footsteps echo longer in long corridors. Lucas walks slowly beneath the arches of the Cour Napoleon, the inner court of the Louvre. The great glass pyramid is not there yet, not in his time, but the space still breathes the same way, calm, ceremonial, open to the sky. The Louvre is a palace before it is a museum. And it is this that Lucas notices first. Not the paintings. Not the statues. But the air. The stone. The shape of light as it falls between columns. A museum may be filled with treasures, he writes, but it is the spaces between them that give room to think. He steps through an open doorway. The scent of oil and varnish drifts faintly through the air. A guard nods without speaking. There is no rush. Lucas does not move like a tourist. He does not come to check names from a list. He wanders. He walks past galleries of Renaissance portraits, noting not the names, but the gestures. The hand resting on a book. The turn of an eye toward something unseen. The hint of a smile, fading after centuries of stillness. He stops before a Madonna, not the most famous one, and watches how the soft blue of her robe catches the window light. Art, he writes, is not a matter of knowing. It is a matter of noticing. And noticing takes time. In a side room, he finds Greek sculpture. He stands beside a broken figure, a torso without arms, half-shadowed. He does not name it. He does not need to. Perfection, he says, is often less moving than what remains. He sits for a while on a wooden bench. Others pass by. Some glance. Some photograph. Some hurry. Lucas stays. Because stillness, here, feels like permission. Geographically, we are in the first arrondissement, just east of the Tuileries Garden. The Louvre stretches along the right bank of the Seine, its galleries looping and folding through centuries of architecture, from fortress to palace to museum. But Lucas isn't concerned with boundaries. He moves from court to gallery as if from one season to another. No direction. Only attention. In the courtyard, the square inner courtyard, the sun is rising now. The shadows of the columns stretch across the stone. Pigeons flutter along the ledges. A single gardener sweeps dust from the paving stones with soft, practiced movements. Lucas does not speak to him. He simply watches. The Louvre, he writes, is full of beauty. But it is the quiet beauty, the unnoticed beauty, that stays with you when you leave. So tonight, imagine this. A vast palace, emptied of noise. Light falling on gold frames. A figure seated alone on a bench, looking not at the art, but at the silence between paintings. You need not study. You need not remember names. Just walk slowly. And allow stillness to find you. For now, stay in the palace. Let the halls stretch wide around you. Let the statues keep their silence. Episode 6, Beneath the Trees of the Luxembourg Gardens. The day is still warm, though the sun has begun its slow descent. In the Luxembourg Gardens, the shadows are longer now, stretched across gravel paths like silk ribbons tossed at random. Lucas walks quietly beneath rows of chestnut trees. The leaves rustle above him, not loudly, but like pages being turned in a slow book. He breathes in the scent of damp earth, trimmed hedges, distant roses, and old fountains. The Jardin du Luxembourg sits on the left bank, in the 6th arrondissement, just south of the Latin Quarter, west of the Pantheon. It is both a garden and a memory, planted in the 1600s, designed by queens and kept by caretakers. But for Lucas, it is not history that matters. It is the rhythm. He watches the people. A man in a linen suit reading L'Echo de Paris. A mother rocking a pram with her foot, eyes closed, not asleep. A child dragging a toy sailboat toward the pond. The French, he writes, understand that to sit quietly among trees is not idleness, but grace. He follows a path toward the octagonal pond, where children guide their boats with sticks and hopes. The boats were painted sails, some striped, some faded, all leaning slightly like real vessels grown tired from travel. Lucas sits on one of the green iron chairs. They are scattered across the gravel like punctuation, commas for pause, periods for rest. This is the best of Paris, he notes. Not in the museums, nor the monuments, but here, in the spaces where people allow themselves to be unhurried. The palace itself, Le Palais du Luxembourg, stands to the north. Dignified. Distant. It houses the French Senate, but Lucas pays it little mind. He is more interested in the statue of a woman nearby, her marble cheek warmed faintly by sun, her expression unreadable. Statues abound here, mythological figures, poets, queens. But they do not demand attention. They simply remain. Present. Quiet. watching generations come and go like the wind. He strolls along the alleys of bleached trees, trunks trimmed, branches squared into green walls. The structure is formal, but the mood is not. A man plays chess with himself. A couple eat pears from a paper bag. A gardener tips his hat without slowing his broom. It is late afternoon. The light is low. Everything feels held. Geography softens in gardens. The city, so structured beyond the gates, loosens inside them. The sounds are different, too, less echo, more texture. Lucas hears gravel underfoot. A bird. Water falling into a moss-dark basin. A bell in the distance, perhaps from St. Sulpice, though he does not turn to check. In gardens, he writes, you measure time in shadows and gestures, not clocks. He stays until dusk. When the wind shifts, carrying the smell of lavender and dusk-warmed stone, he knows it is time to go. But not far. Just back through the gate. Just back into the city. So tonight, or today, picture this. A path beneath trees. A green chair beside a pond. A garden that does not ask anything of you, except to be present. You are not required to speak. You are not expected to move quickly. You may simply sit, breathe, and be among leaves and strangers who feel like friends. Let the fountains murmur. Let the shadows stretch. And let stillness take root beneath your thoughts. Episode 7, The Island and the Bells of Notre Dame. The river parts gently here. On either side, Paris continues, stretching, climbing, pulsing with footsteps and wheels. But in the middle, on a small stone island held between branches of the Seine, something else happens. Something slower. Lucas crosses one of the bridges onto Al Dalah site, the ancient heart of Paris. And the sound that meets him first is not traffic, nor voices. It is a bell. The bells of Notre Dame ring high above him. Not loudly, not harshly, but in waves. Soft bronze waves that ripple outward across rooftops and reflect back off the water. Lucas looks up. The cathedral towers over the square like a memory made of stone. Its great rose window is silent now, but shimmering faintly in the afternoon haze. Pigeons settle on its ledges. A dog lies curled in a patch of light by the steps. Children play quietly under the chestnut trees. The island, Lucas writes, belongs to the city, and also to something older. A pulse beneath the cobblestones. A hush between the bells. He does not go inside the cathedral. He has no need. Instead, he walks the perimeter, following the Rue du Cloître Notre Dame, past iron railings, trailing vines, and sunlit windows with flower pots still clinging to summer. He notes the gargoyles, weather-worn and wild-eyed. The scent of old stone and water. The way the island narrows at its tip, like a ship setting sail. Geographically, Al Dalah site is small, less than a kilometer long. But it holds centuries. It was once a Roman camp. Then a medieval fortress. Then the seat of kings. Now it is gardens, police offices, chapels, and cafes. And at its center, always, Notre Dame. But Lucas walks without reverence. Only attention. The island, he says, is not a relic. It breathes. He passes the flower market, fragrant and half-empty now in late day. Lilies lean sleepily in buckets. Lavender crumbles in paper cones. A woman arranges stems as if time were elastic. Lucas buys nothing. But he remembers the names of the colors. At the island's eastern tip, he enters the small garden called Square Jean XXII. It is quiet here. The cathedral's apse curves above like a stone wave. Benches circle a small fountain, and beyond that, the river. He sits. Watches the Seine move past. Listens to the bells again, this time fainter, as if remembered rather than heard. Paris is loud, he writes. But here, the noise has rhythm. And rhythm, like the tide, can soothe. So tonight, imagine this. A stone island in a flowing river. Bells calling gently through open air. A man sitting on a bench with his coat folded beside him. Watching water and sky take turns in silence. You do not need to pray. You do not need to understand. Only listen. Only be. Remain on the island. Let the bells fade slowly. Let the water pass without question. Episode 8, Courtyards and Corners of the Marais. The air feels different here. Cooler. Quieter. As though the streets themselves have drawn the curtains and dimmed the lamps. Lucas walks slowly through the Marais, one of the oldest quarters in Paris. And perhaps the most secretive. It lies to the north of the river, just beyond the islands and boulevards. Not grand like the avenues. Not showy like the left bank. But filled with shapes and shadows, with hidden gardens and doorways that remember centuries. The Marais, Lucas writes, is a district of detail. One must walk slowly, or not at all. He begins in Place de Vosges, the oldest planned square in Paris, a perfect square of red brick facades and arcades, anchored by lime trees and quiet benches. There are fountains here. Children with sticks. An old man reading aloud to himself in the sun. Lucas sits beneath the arches and watches the wind pull leaves in soft spirals through the square. Paris shows itself to those who ask little, he writes. To sit is sometimes to see more. Beyond the square, he enters the web of narrow streets. Rue de Francs Bourgeois, Rue du Roi de Sicile, Rue Vieille du Temple. All twisting and quiet, still carrying the footprints of kings, revolutionaries, and tailors. Here, the buildings lean toward one another. Wooden beams sleep beneath plaster. Wrought iron curls across balconies. In every few blocks, a door opens not into a shop, but into a courtyard. Lucas steps through one such door. The light changes instantly. Noise falls away. He finds himself in a hidden space, flagstones underfoot, a fig tree in one corner, windows shuttered and still. No signs. No plaques. Only quiet. A city like Paris holds its soul in corners, Lucas notes. This is one of them. He passes Hotel de Sully, with its secret garden. He sees ivy climbing towards sculpted stone faces. He pauses in Rue de Rosiers, where bakeries breathe out the scent of warm bread and history side by side. He hears distant violin music from an upstairs window. Not performed, only played. And the Marais, he senses, is listening too. This part of the city was once marshland, Marais, then noble estates, then homes for artisans, then the center of Jewish Paris. It has changed 1,000 ways. And yet it remains a place for walking, for wondering. Lucas does not explain it. He lets it linger. Some places are not meant to be described, he writes. Only return to, slowly, without reason. So tonight, imagine this. A narrow street, shaded by shuttered windows. A cat asleep on a sill. A man turning a corner with no destination, only time. The city here does not perform. It does not beckon. It waits. You are welcome to follow. But only if your footsteps are quiet enough to match its own. Let the day close gently. Let the street lamps warm the walls. Let your thoughts drift like leaves along a forgotten path. Episode 9, Twilight on the Champs-Élysées. The light begins to soften. It slides down the facades of tall buildings, turning white stone to gold, and then to something quieter, a warm gray that belongs only to evening. Lucas has reached the Champs-Élysées, just as day gives way to dusk. But he is not here for crowds. He is here for the hush that follows them. The Champs-Élysées is wide, famously so, stretching from Place de la Concorde in the east to the Arc de Triomphe in the west, its lines straight and formal, its movement constant. But Lucas does not walk down the center. He moves along the edges. Under the chestnut trees. Where shadows fall longer, and footsteps seem less sure of themselves. Paris, he writes, does not reveal itself all at once. Even the grandest avenues are best approached sideways. He passes the cafes and theaters, the signs still lit, but the patrons quiet now. A waiter stacks chairs without hurry. A lamp flickers above a doorway. A boy on a bicycle coasts silently down the middle of the road, chasing nothing. Lucas does not chase either. He pauses often. He watches the sky change color behind the Arc de Triomphe. Its arch no longer a monument, but a silhouette. Though the avenue is famous, Lucas seems only mildly impressed by its reputation. What he notices instead is the feeling of transition. From day to night. From busyness to pause. From clarity to mystery. The city prepares itself for sleep, he writes. Not with silence, but with slowness. As he walks, the wind shifts slightly, warmer now, scented faintly with chestnut smoke and perfume. Couples stroll past, walking without speaking. Carriages rattle less frequently. The city is exhaling. Lucas stops near Place de l'Étoile, where 12 avenues meet in a quiet geometry of movement. He looks up at the arc. It is not the height that moves me, he writes. It is the emptiness beneath it. The space it gives to the sky. Paris at twilight is not one thing. It is 1,000 small things. The clink of a glass on a distant terrace. The rustle of trees above a sleeping dog. The first stars, barely visible, watching the city with patient interest. Lucas does not need a destination. He turns down a side street, his coat catching the light from a single gas lamp. So tonight, imagine this. A wide avenue dimming under trees. A sky slowly deepening from rose to ink. And a man walking softly with no reason to hurry. Letting the evening carry him toward whatever comes next. There is no need to speak. No need to arrive. Only to move through twilight with open eyes. But for now, let the day end. Let the avenue rest. And let your thoughts wander without urgency. Episode 10, Bookshops and Backstreets of the Latin Quarter. There is a rustling in the air this morning. Not from trees, nor from wind, but from pages. Somewhere, a door creaks open. A bell above it chimes softly. A footstep brushes across old wooden boards. Lucas has crossed the river again. He is in the Latin Quarter now, and he is following the scent of books. Here, in the 5th arrondissement, the streets narrow once more. They twist and lean and carry echoes. The buildings seem to whisper, especially along Rue de la Parcheminerie, Rue Monsieur le Prince, and Rue de l'Odéon. This is the oldest intellectual heart of Paris. A place of students and scholars, pamphlets and poetry, discussions and dust. The Latin Quarter, Lucas writes, is where ideas walk before they speak. He stops at a small bookshop, tucked into a shaded corner beneath a peeling sign. There are books in the window, not carefully arranged, but settled, like cats finding their own place. Some titles are faded. Some are in Latin. One is held closed with string. Lucas steps inside. The air is different here, thick with time. The walls are lined with shelves, the shelves with names. Balzac, Pascal, Hugo, Molière, Montaigne, Voltaire, and so many more without fame, but with pages full of voices still waiting to be heard. The bookseller does not speak. He simply nods, then returns to his stool, where he reads a book with no cover. Lucas smiles. One does not come here to find a book, he notes. One comes to be found by one. He lets his fingers trace along spines. He opens one book to find a dried flower pressed between pages. Another has a note scribbled in pencil, "Don't forget to look out the window." He closes it, gently. Outside, the bells of St. Severin begin to chime. Lucas walks again. He passes students leaning in doorways, old men hunched over newspapers, a blackboard with chalk equations slowly vanishing in the morning sun. He does not rush. This quarter asks for patience. He turns onto Rue Mouffetard, where market stalls spill color into the street, olives, cheese, pears, tomatoes still warm from the sun. But even here, books find him. A box of used poetry. A child's primer from 1830. He lifts one gently, leafs through a few pages, and places it back. Not because it wasn't good, but because it wasn't his book, not today. The Latin Quarter, Lucas writes, is less a place than a mood. A pause between sentences. A corner where thought lingers. As noon nears, the streets grow busier. But still, there is room. Room to pause, to sit beneath a window, to let your mind wander without obligation. Lucas finds a small cafe, orders nothing, and writes in his notebook for a long time without lifting his head. So tonight, or today, imagine this. A crooked street with ivy above it. A stack of books without price tags. The sound of someone turning a page just a little too slowly. You are not expected to speak. Only to read. Or to listen. Or simply to notice that this, too, is part of the city. But for now, let the books rest. Let the street be narrow. And let your thoughts remain open like a story not yet finished. Episode 11, Stillness and Sky at Place de la Concorde. The square is enormous. And yet, somehow, still quiet. Lucas stands at the edge of Place de la Concorde, where streets converge like thoughts drawn inward, and where the sky, for once, seems to outsize the city itself. This is not a place of movement, but of memory. Once known as Place Louis XV, later Place de la Révolution, and now Concorde, this space has held monarchs, protests, fountains, executions, and parades. But on this particular day, it holds only light. The sun reflects softly off stone. The fountains murmur. And pigeons circle above the wide plaza like punctuation marks without a sentence. Paris remembers everything, Lucas writes. But it remembers quietly. He begins his walk from the Tuileries Gardens, passing beneath rows of sycamores just beginning to turn at the edges. Their leaves rustle faintly in the breeze, the sound of parchment shifting on a desk. At the western gate of the garden, he steps into the square. Here, the space opens wide. Not grand in the usual sense, not cluttered with ornament, but vast. The eye travels without obstruction. He looks toward the obelisk at the center, a gift from Egypt, weathered, ancient, out of place and entirely at home. The obelisk stands not as a symbol, Lucas muses, but as a pause, a way of asking the city to slow down, just here, just now. To the north, he sees the twin facades of the Hotel de Crillon and the Ministry of the Navy, dignified and gray. To the south, across the river, the Assemblée Nationale, set back behind columns like a watching figure. To the west, the long corridor of the Champs-Élysées, faintly golden in the low light. But Lucas does not follow any of them. He walks slowly around the fountains. Water spills gently from bronze basins, glinting in the air before returning to its pool with the lightest sound. Statues of seas and rivers lean against one another, tritons, fish, muscular abstractions of nature, but still, all is calm. A man reads a newspaper on the edge of the basin. A woman feeds crumbs to invisible birds. The traffic, ever present, seems to hush itself at the square's edge, as if in recognition. Lucas steps closer to the obelisk. He runs a hand lightly along its sun-warmed side. Hieroglyphs look back at him from another world, another language. But he does not try to decipher them. Not all stories must be understood, he writes. Some only need to be witnessed. The clouds above him shift. The sky turns from blue to silver. And the wind rises slightly, just enough to remind him that the square has always been open to the elements, and always will be. So tonight, imagine this. A wide expanse of stone, water, and sky. A city breathing just outside the frame. And a man alone in the center, not claiming the space, only noticing it. There are no crowds. No ceremony. Just a circle of fountains, a needle of stone, and the quiet dignity of a place that remembers too much to speak. Let the wind move gently. Let the square remain still. And let your breath stretch wide like a boulevard at rest. Episode 12, Through the Covered Passages. Rain has begun to fall, not heavily, not in sheets, but in a soft, fine drizzle that glosses the pavements and sends a quiet shimmer across rooftops and railings. Lucas lifts the collar of his coat and turns not to shelter, but to something better. The covered passages of Paris. Hidden between the boulevards, tucked behind shop fronts and tucked under glass, these passages form a kind of secret city within the city. They are not grand. They do not shout. But they carry something rare, a sense of pause. The passages, Lucas writes, are the city's whispered conversations, half-lit, half-forgotten, and entirely worth hearing. He steps into the first, Passage de Panoramas, off Boulevard Montmartre. The change is instant. Outside, umbrellas, wet stone, blurred traffic. Inside, amber light, the scent of ink and chocolate, and the soft hush of people walking slowly with nowhere urgent to be. Here, the ceiling is glass. Rain taps gently above like someone knocking at the wrong door. Lucas walks past shops barely wider than closets. A stamp dealer with tiny drawers. A bookseller whose shelves tilt slightly. A menu written in handwriting more elegant than the food it promises. He pauses at a shop selling old theater programs. Inside, Parisian nights preserved in paper, performances from 1874, 1891, 1903. Dates fading, but names still legible. In the passages, he writes, time loses confidence. It stops pretending to be linear. He continues through Passage Geoffroy, where the floors shine like polished memory and the mirrors multiply your reflection until you forget which version is walking forward. He watches a child pointing to a mechanical toy in a shop window, the kind wound by key and powered by wonder. Next door, an elderly man adjusts a bow tie in the glass, though he wears no coat and has nowhere to go. No one rushes. The very air seems padded. Geographically, the passages cluster in the second arrondissement, near the old Grands Boulevards. They were built in the 19th century, before the rise of department stores, covered arcades to protect Parisians from weather, crowds, and even time. Lucas does not list them. He simply finds them. He passes through Passage Verdot, pale and hushed. Then Gallery Vivian, more elegant, lined with mosaics, columns, books, and lace. The sound of footsteps here is distinct. Not harsh, not echoing, but softened, as though the stones themselves are listening. He stops at a cafe tucked into the passage's curve. There are 3 tables. All empty. The waiter reads a newspaper. Lucas orders nothing. He sits for a while, simply watching the rain on the glass above. The city moves outside. But in here, it waits. Shelter, he writes, is not always protection. Sometimes it is permission, to be still, to look closely, to listen without interruption. So tonight, imagine this. A narrow passage glowing softly. Shops half open. Books slightly askew. Rain ticking gently above a ceiling of glass. You are neither inside nor outside. Neither hurried nor lost. Only present. Moving slowly beneath a city that has learned how to hold its breath. For now, stay beneath the glass. Let the world pass gently above you. And let your thoughts wander softly, like footsteps on polished stone. Episode 13, Rain Light on the Isle St. Louis. The rain has quieted. It lingers now in droplets on leaves, on shutters, on the thin iron railings that guard the river's edge. The streets are washed, not flooded, glistening with a stillness that feels deliberate. Lucas has crossed to the Isle St. Louis, the quieter of the two river islands. If Isle de la Cite is the heart of old Paris, then St. Louis is its breath. Here, the streets are narrow, residential, intimate. There are no monuments. No grand facades. Only a few shops, the warm scent of bread, and the sound of water moving gently against stone. The island is not a place to see, Lucas writes. It is a place to feel. To pass through without disturbing. He begins along Rue St. Louis and L'Isle, walking past shuttered windows, flower boxes damp with rain, and a cat curled in the corner of a doorway. He pauses often, not to admire, but to absorb. A small grocer is arranging apples. A woman shakes a rug from an upstairs window. A baker's apprentice whistles, then stops, as if the melody didn't quite belong here. Lucas does not mind the slowness. He welcomes it. He lets the island set the pace. Paris is many cities layered over one another, he writes. Here, the layers thin. At the eastern tip of the island, he finds a bench overlooking the Seine. To the north, Le Marais, just visible through mist. To the south, the Latin Quarter, waking again. But here, between bridges, there is only water, and the sound of it lapping gently at the stone, as if breathing. He watches a barge pass under Pont de la Tournelle. A gull lands on the railing beside him, regards him briefly, then flies off again, trailing rainlight on its wings. Nothing demands attention. Everything is waiting. This island was once called Île Notre Dame, used for grazing in gardens. Later it was reshaped, named for the king, and built into quiet elegance. But none of that matters now. Lucas sees only its present mood. Its wet cobblestones. Its curved corners. Its softness. He walks along the quays that line the island's edge, narrow walkways that feel more like thoughts than streets. To his left, river. To his right, lives being lived behind shuttered windows and soft yellow lamps. It is enough, he writes, to walk without destination, to look without question, to be met by nothing, and still feel welcomed. So tonight, imagine this. A small island at the center of a great city. Wet stone glowing in fading light. A bench beneath a plane tree. And silence that does not ask to be filled. Let the bridges arch behind you. Let the river hold you. Let your breath follow its slow rhythm towards sleep. Let the island drift with you. Still, quiet, and entirely present. Episode 14, Morning Light in Saint-Germain. The morning is pale and clear. Paris stirs without noise, like a body stretching in sleep. Shutters creak open. Steam rises from café tables. And the bells of Saint-Germain-des-Prés ring softly, not as a summons, but as a sigh. Lucas is already walking. He has crossed from the river into Saint-Germain, the old literary quarter of the 6th arrondissement. But he is not seeking writers, or monuments, or memories. He is simply following the light. There are parts of Paris, he writes, that seem made of conversation. Saint-Germain is one, but only after the first coffee. He begins at the church. Église de Saint-Germain-des-Prés is one of the oldest in the city. Its tower rises with quiet dignity, weathered by 1,000 years of worship and waiting. Lucas stands in the square outside. A waiter sweeps yesterday's crumbs from the pavement. A woman walks a small dog who doesn't want to walk. A newspaper kiosk opens its shutters with the slow rhythm of routine. He listens, but does not speak. The light glides over cobblestones and cafe awnings. It brushes the spines of books and windows, leans against bicycles, slips through railings onto cellar doors. Lucas follows it into Rue Bonaparte, then turns down Rue de la Baie. The streets here are narrow, irregular, the way memories might arrange themselves. He passes bookshops. One is still closed, but the lights are on. Inside, a woman in a red sweater arranges a stack of essays. She does not see him. But Lucas pauses anyway, watching the way she tilts each book before placing it. The poetry of a city, he writes, is not in its voices, but in its gestures. He steps into Café de Flore, not for fame, not for name, but because the windows are large and the sun has just begun to touch table 3. He does not order. He does not sit. He simply watches the way the day begins to take shape around warm cups and quiet people. Geographically, Saint-Germain sits just west of the Latin Quarter, south of the river, between memory and modernity. It was once the home of philosophers, poets, jazz musicians, and revolutionaries. But today, it is just itself. Calm. Patterned. Waking slowly. Lucas turns into Rue de l'Echaude, where the cobblestones are uneven and the bakery doors are already open. He smells warm bread, orange peel, steam. A boy rides past on a bicycle with one hand in his pocket. A man waters a pot of thyme on his windowsill, blinking into the sunlight. Saint-Germain, Lucas writes, knows how to begin a day, not with urgency, but with awareness. So this morning, or this evening, or whenever your mind seeks stillness, picture a quiet street in golden light. A bookshop opening. A bell ringing without insistence. And the steady rhythm of footsteps that are in no rush to arrive. Let the city wake slowly around you. Let the light find your shoulder. And let the page turn gently. But for now, let Saint-Germain hold you. Warm, walking, and ready for nothing in particular. Episode 15, Evening Air in Belleville. The sun is lower now. Not gone, but softened. Its light no longer reaches the streets straight on, but bends around corners, spills across rooftops, rests gently on railings and windowsills. Lucas has wandered far this time. To the northeastern edge of Paris. To a hill less polished, less celebrated, but no less alive. He is in Belleville. Here, the streets climb. They do not curve elegantly like in Montmartre. They tilt. They rise like thoughts trying to become questions. Lucas walks up slowly, not just because the hill is steep, but because the light is beautiful, and no one who truly sees beauty ever moves quickly. The air here is not refined, he writes. It is honest. It smells of food, of stone, of people coming home. Belleville was once a village beyond the walls of Paris. A place of vines and brick ovens, of artisans and anarchists, of migrants and makers. Now, it is part of the city, but still carries its edge. Lucas does not romanticize it. But he listens. He hears music from a window, faint, fast, and played without perfection. He sees laundry fluttering across a narrow street like banners in a silent parade. He watches an old man sweep the steps of a shuttered cafe, pausing every so often, not from weariness, but from habit. He climbs past Rue d'Envierges, up toward the Parc de Belleville. There, the city opens up again, suddenly, and all at once. Beneath him, Paris. The towers of Notre Dame in the distance. The dome of the Pantheon. The thread of the Seine. And the haze of golden light that settles on rooftops like memory. From here, Lucas writes, Paris is not a map. It is a pattern. A tapestry of heat and windows and evening songs. He walks the edge of the park, past children playing in the last of the daylight. Past a woman carrying a bag of peaches. Past a boy on a bench who writes something in a notebook, then tears the page out and lets it go. The wind takes it. The city does not. The streets here are quieter now. Shutters close. Chairs are brought in. The day exhales. Lucas turns down a narrow stairway, Rue Piat, stepping carefully. Not for fear of falling, but out of reverence for the moment. He does not need to find anything. He is already surrounded by enough. The sound of footsteps on iron. The warmth of stone that still holds the sun. The hush that arrives just before the lights come on. Belleville, Lucas writes, does not ask to be admired. Only noticed. So tonight, imagine this. A hill above the city. Light fading over rooftops. And a quiet traveler watching the sky change color. Grateful for one more street. One more hour. One more breath in a city that always gives more than it takes. Let the sky turn indigo. Let the city settle beneath you. And let your heart climb softly toward sleep. Episode 16, Courtyards of Forgotten Hotels. The door is half open. Not a grand door. Not the kind with brass and glass. But wooden, cracked slightly at the bottom, its paint faded by rain and afternoon light. Lucas pushes gently, and it yields, without creak, without resistance. He steps into a courtyard. Paris is full of these hidden spaces. They are not marked on maps. They are not listed in guides. But they remain, tucked behind iron gates and quiet facades, behind shops and cafes and hotels no longer fashionable. To find a courtyard, Lucas writes, is to find a room the city forgot to close. The one he enters now is long and narrow. Its walls rise on either side, pale, dappled, ivy-streaked. At ground level, small windows blink behind lace curtains. On the far wall, an old fountain, dry now, but shaped like water still remembers it. There are plants, unpruned. Chairs, mismatched. And silence, not heavy, but kind. He has come here not by accident, but without intention. Drawn by the shape of the door. By the promise of somewhere slightly more still than the street outside. The hotel it belongs to is faded. Its name has changed 3 times. Its sign hangs askew. But the sense of waiting remains. He walks softly, not wanting to echo. He sees a coat draped over a chair, a bicycle leaned gently against a drain pipe, and a row of herbs in mismatched pots, thyme, mint, something gone to seed. In these courtyards, Lucas notes, there is no ambition. Only presence. He finds a bench, one side slants slightly, and sits. Above him, laundry flutters between floors. A blackbird lands on the edge of a planter. A child calls out from a window, and somewhere above, a mother answers without words. The walls hold every sound like secrets they've promised not to tell. He takes out his notebook, opens it, then closes it again. Some moments are not meant to be written. Only lived. Geographically, Lucas is somewhere near Rue du Bac, perhaps Rue Saint-Roch, or just beyond the Opera, but geography is beside the point. This isn't a destination. It's an opening. The city, he writes, often reveals itself not in its avenues, but in its margins. In places made not for passing through, but for pausing within. So tonight, imagine this. A courtyard forgotten by time. A bench with soft green paint. A window with a light behind it, not bright, not dark, just enough. You are not expected to understand where you are. Only to know that you are inside something quiet. And safe. Close the door behind you. Let the stone hold your breath. And rest in the stillness no one else is looking for. Episode 17, Dusk Among the Columns of Polaroil. Evening returns gently to the Polaroil. Not as drama. Not as spectacle. But as softness. The shadows arrive before the lamps. They slip between columns, stretch across gravel, settle on benches like forgotten coats. Lucas walks through the southern gate. And the square receives him as it always does, without urgency. He has been here before. But now it is different. Because the light is different. Because he is walking at a different hour. With a different silence in mind. To return is not to repeat, Lucas writes. The city does not offer sameness, only variation. The arcades of the Polaroil hold a glow now. Shops are closing. Their golden lettering dim in reflection, their doors soft in their final clicks. A bookseller lifts a small stack to carry inside. Two men play chess beside the fountain, their game paused, neither ready to resign. The gravel is quiet beneath Lucas's feet. He does not look for anything. He listens. The garden is bordered by trees, cut into rectangles, held in green geometry. But nothing about it feels strict. The symmetry allows space. For thought. For drifting. For breath. He sits on a bench facing west. Above him, a row of lamps, already lit. Beside him, an empty chair, left an invitation. Before him, dusk unfolding like a book whose pages turn themselves. Polaroil, Lucas writes, is a place where time is trained not to hurry. The columns rise in quiet repetition. Simple. Stone. They do not demand admiration. They ask only that you notice the pattern they create. Not what they hold up, but what they leave open. Children run between them. A scarf trails behind like a ribbon of air. Laughter echoes briefly, then disappears like vapor into the cooling night. Lucas watches. He does not write this down. Some things are remembered only by the eyes. Geographically, the Polaroil is not far from the Louvre, from the banks of the Seine, from the heart of the city. But here, geography gives way to atmosphere. It is not where you are. It is how you feel there. The lights in the gallery flicker. A shutter lowers. The fountains hush. Lucas stands. Not to leave, but to walk once more beneath the trees, and let the evening finish what the day began. So tonight, imagine this. A courtyard lined with columns. The echo of footsteps that do not ask for attention. A chess game still in progress. And the breath of Paris folding gently into night. Let the lamps warm the arcades. Let the benches remember your name. And let dusk continue, with or without you. Stay beneath the leaves. Let the fountains sleep. Episode 18, Before the Stalls Awaken at Marquet de Liger. The sky is still gray. Not stormy, just unfinished. Lucas walks through narrow streets in the 12th arrondissement, where shutters are just beginning to open, and the city still stretches beneath its covers. He is heading toward Marquet de Liger, a market older than memory, where the morning begins not with speech, but with motion. Before the vendors call, before the prices are scrawled in chalk, before the scent of herbs and fruit thickens the air, there is a moment of preparation. Lucas arrives just then. The city, he writes, has two awakenings, one of light, and one of sound. The market lives between them. He walks slowly between wooden crates and canvas-covered stalls. Men unload boxes of apples. Women arrange lemons in pyramids. A boy sweeps rainwater off the cobblestones with long strokes, as if drawing something invisible. The air smells of soil, old metal, and the beginnings of bread. Marquet de Liger lies just east of Place de Louisiana Bastille, tucked between brick buildings and a quiet square. It is not elegant. It is not curated. But it lives. Lucas stands before a stall filled only with leaves, parsley, basil, mint. Tied in bundles, trembling slightly in the morning air. He watches a woman count shallots with her fingers, lips moving, eyes steady. She does not notice him. She does not need to. The city does not always ask to be seen. Only witnessed. Inside the covered hall, the Marquet Beauvau, the light is dim, tinted by skylights and glass. There is cheese. There are sausages wrapped in linen. There are olives in terracotta bowls, sleeping under oil. A butcher sharpens his knife without urgency. Two florists debate quietly over a bucket of drooping tulips. Lucas does not interrupt. He simply stands beside a pillar and listens. Markets, he writes, are the city's heartbeat, not regular, but vital. They do not decorate Paris. They are Paris. As the sun lifts, pale now, behind the rooftops, voices rise. Not loud. Not competing. Just present. Coins clink. Paper rustles. A knife hits wood. Someone laughs without explanation. Lucas turns toward a stall selling dates and dried oranges. The vendor greets him in silence, with a nod, with open hands. Lucas nods back. Buys nothing. Receives everything. He leaves the market slowly, walking toward Rue de Charenton. Carrying no basket, no bag. But carrying stillness, as if it had been wrapped for him like cheese and paper. So this morning, or evening, imagine this. The sound of stalls being unfastened. The weight of ripe pears in the hand of a stranger. And the breath of a city beginning again, not with noise, but with care. Let the streets fill gently. Let the air warm slowly. Let your thoughts gather like morning light on fruit. Let the market wake without you, and rest in the space between sleep and morning. Episode 19, Along the Canal St. Martin. The water is still here. Not because nothing moves, but because everything does so slowly. Lucas walks along the Canal St. Martin, a quiet ribbon of water that stretches through the northeast of Paris. This is not the Seine. It is narrower, more secretive. Lined not with monuments but with iron footbridges and tall, leaning trees. The canal, he writes, is not for show. It is for watching. The locks are quiet this morning. The green-painted mechanisms are slick with mist. The iron gates hold water in place like thoughts held just below the surface. Lucas watches a barge drift in. Its motion calm, certain. Like a conversation that began long ago and will take all day to finish. He begins near Rue du Faubourg du Temple, where the canal disappears under a tunnel and re-emerges, blinking, into light. Here, the world softens. Couples walk slowly. Children trail sticks in the water. A woman leans over a balcony with wet hair and no intention of doing anything soon. The buildings are not grand. The trees are not arranged. But everything feels settled. As if Paris has allowed this one part of itself to remain unhurried. Lucas crosses a footbridge, one of the arched passerelles that rise gently over the canal. Their railings are worn smooth. Touched by thousands of hands, none in haste. He stands at the top and looks down. The water carries leaves, a bottle, the reflection of the sky, and the vague memory of music from a distant apartment window. Paris, he writes, has many surfaces. But the canal shows what lies just beneath. Geographically, Canal St. Martin begins near Place de la Bastille and runs northeast through the 10th arrondissement. Passing under bridges, through locks, and past neighborhoods with laundry hanging in every color. It is not elegant. It is not curated. And that is why Lucas returns to it. He follows the path northward. A bicycle passes. A man eats from a paper bag beside a stone wall. A dog watches ducks with neither interest nor intention. There is no agenda here. Only the rhythm of water moving at the pace of thought. He stops where the canal curves gently near Rue de l'Ancre. He sits on the edge of the walkway, legs dangling just above the lapping green. The light has shifted. Not warmer, not colder, just changed. Like a sentence that's turned toward its final clause. To walk beside the canal, Lucas writes, is not to see Paris, but to be with it. So tonight, imagine this. Still water beneath a rusted bridge. Trees reflected upside down in slow movement. And a man walking with his hands in his pockets. Pausing often. Listening not to sounds, but to quiet. There are no crowds here. No direction. Only you, and the water, and the long exhale of a city at rest. Let the locks remain closed. Let the bridges hold their curve. and let the water carry you gently toward sleep. Episode 20, A Station Without Departures. There is something solemn about a train station at rest. Not in motion. Not filled with steam or whistles or movement. But quiet, before departure, or long after arrival. Lucas finds himself at the edge of one such station. He does not enter to travel. Only to listen. This is Gare de l'Est, in the 10th arrondissement, not far from the canal he left behind. A place of journeys. To Strasbourg, to Germany, to long-forgotten border towns. But Lucas is not interested in destinations. A station, he writes, is where motion pauses long enough to become thought. The great hall echoes, even when empty. Suitcases click across tile. A woman reads the same line in her book, over and over. A man looks at the departure board, though he is clearly not leaving. Lucas walks the length of the concourse. He watches the way the sunlight filters through high windows, turning dust into something almost sacred. There are statues here. Plaques. Memorials. Trains have left for war from this station. Trains have returned. But today, the only thing departing is sound. Fading footsteps, a single announcement, the distant roll of wheels far beyond the platform. He does not step onto a train. He does not check the time. He sits on a bench facing the tracks, and lets the platform stretch before him like a blank page. The promise of departure, Lucas writes, is sometimes more beautiful than the act itself. Outside, the sky is pale. Not quite clouded. Not quite clear. The street beyond the station pulses faintly with motion. But here, the world holds its breath. He watches two workers sweep the platform with long, even strokes. They do not hurry. They do not speak. Behind him, a porter waits beside a cart. Hands folded, eyes soft. He is not impatient. He has waited before. The architecture of the station is grand. But Lucas focuses on the spaces in between. The stillness under the arches. The way sound carries just before it disappears. The quiet geometry of anticipation. He stands. Walks to the edge of the platform. Looks down at the rails. They vanish into a tunnel. Into distance. Into nothing. He nods. Then turns back toward the entrance. You do not have to go, he writes. You only need to know that you could. So tonight, imagine this. A vast train hall, empty of crowds. Dust turning gold in filtered sun. A bench without urgency. A train that may never arrive. There is no motion required. Only presence. Only breath. Let the journey remain a possibility. Let the platform remain yours. And let the station hold you without asking why. Let the engines sleep. Let the rails rest. And let yourself stay still. At the edge of going. But going nowhere. Episode 21, Last Reflections by the Seine. Even the river seems slower today. Its surface holds the sky like a mirror gently breathing. Lucas walks again along the banks of the Seine. Not to explore, not to discover, but simply to return. Because all wanderers, in time, return to the river. He begins where he first began, near Pont Neuf, the oldest bridge in Paris. Arched and steady, its stones worn smooth by footsteps, by wheels, by weather, by memory. But this time, he does not stand still. He walks. One does not cross the same river twice, Lucas writes. And one does not return to it unchanged. The city around him is familiar now. The corners, the shadows, the rhythm of light against old stone. But even familiarity can surprise. When seen through the lens of quiet. He passes the booksellers, their green boxes closed for the evening. He passes the willow tree at the tip of Aldelasite, its branches trailing in the water like a signature written slowly and left unfinished. Lucas watches the sun lower behind Pont d'Arts. The river reflects it not as flame, but as warmth. Two swans drift beneath the arches. A boy tosses pebbles into the current. A violin plays faintly from somewhere behind him. Not a performance, just a tune finding its way into the evening. He does not write. He does not speak. He only walks, letting the city fall into step beside him. He follows the Quai Voltaire, where painters once lived and poets once stared at the same sky he sees now. The Seine remains, not unchanged, but unhurried. The river, Lucas writes, teaches what maps cannot. That place is less important than presence. As he reaches the bend near the Musée d'Orsay, the light begins to shift. From amber to pearl. From day to dusk. He pauses by the stone railing. The water moves. The city breathes. And Lucas stands still, not out of weariness, but out of gratitude. So tonight, imagine this. A river you have seen before. But not from this side. And not with this sky. Let the bridges hold their arches. Let the current carry what you no longer need. And let the city remind you, gently, that you were here. You saw. You paused. You wandered. And that was enough. This may be our last walk with Lucas in Paris. Or perhaps, only the last for now. But wherever your mind travels next. To another city, another book, another quiet. Remember this. The river waits without asking. And silence always finds a way back. Epilogue, A City Walked in Stillness. For E.V. Lucas, and for you. We have reached the end. Not of Paris. For that city never ends. But of a particular way of seeing it. One step at a time. One breath at a time. Through the eyes of a man who never rushed. And never asked you to. Edward Verrall Lucas walked Paris in 1909. He did not seek drama. Or monument. Or meaning. He sought presence. And he found it. In a garden bench at dusk. In the curve of a narrow street. In a window half open, with curtains drifting like breath. Through these 21 quiet chapters, we followed his footsteps. Not to arrive anywhere, but to linger everywhere. We moved through Montmartre and Saint-Germain. Through bridges and back streets. Through bookshops and courtyards. Through markets waking and stations at rest. We listened. We paused. We noticed. To wander, Lucas wrote, is not to be lost, but to be exactly where you are, without needing to be elsewhere. So wherever you are now, in bed, in thought, in quiet, know this. You walked with him. You walked with Paris. And perhaps, for a moment, you walked more gently through yourself. Let the bells fade. Let the river turn its page. Let the city dim its lights behind closed shutters. And let this walk, this soft and unhurried walk, carry you into sleep. Thank you for wandering. Sleep well, traveler.